how can we ensure the appropriate certification levels are basically the standard that we're looking at, Ben?
So there's two ways to do this, right? One is to use your amazing slides that you're going to send out and to figure out, go through and look through all the links and really get educated on the definition of CUI. But even then, let's say, are you at level 3 if you have CUI, or are you going to be at level 4 or 5, right? Maybe hire a consultant, something like that. So kind of do this on your own, one way or another, try to figure it out. But the other is look at the contracts that you're bidding on. Look at the kind of information that you are managing through, or you will be managing through those contracts. Because the fact is, the process is going to be done through acquisition. The Defense Acquisition University, I'm working with them pretty closely, is getting ready to, and it already has trained some of their acquisitions folks, right? So the contracting officers and so on, about CUI. So really, the acquisitions piece of DoD is going to include, they're going to include in the RFPs and RFIs the required level. That, if you're at level, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, that's, what you need to be at to be able to bid on the contract and win. Obviously not bid, but win, right? So sometimes you might have time between the bidding and the winning, but at award time, you need to have the right level. So that's one way you can know, but of course, a lot of times that's too late, right? The fact is, your organization, if you're like a level 4 or 5, you have the maturity required. You know what that really means in terms of, the organizational maturity, the repeatability, the reporting capacity, of course, policies, processes, all those kinds of things that are required in levels 4 and 5. If you're not sure, you want to either hire a professional to tell you, look into those links, or look at the kinds of contracts that are coming down the line and maybe get together with your contracting officers and see what they're thinking for the renewal. However, again, a lot of them right now might be onshore as well, because this stuff is just getting started. So it could be a bit of an uncertainty right now.
Yeah, so we all know the baseline, if you hold FCI, is going to be at least level 1. And we all know that the baseline for holding CUI is going to be level 3. But what are some of those indicators that would let a contractor know that he needs to either look at level 2 or look at levels 4 and 5?
That's, from my perspective, if you are handling CUI and you've never done a 171 audit or assessment, and you believe that you may be, you may not be ready for a CMMC assessment, try to go for level 2 with the thinking that you're going to get to level 3 as quickly as possible. However, if you're not running CUI, then it makes sense to go to level 2, right? Because if you're planning on it, if you don't have CUI and you're planning on doing CUI, that's when you really would want to go to level 2 in preparation for level 3. If you're running CUI, you really want to go for level 3 or above. For level 4 and 5, honestly, I don't have a good answer for you. Maybe you know that.
Yeah, so some of the things that I've seen, of course, it applies to those organizations that are identified for those advanced persistent threats. And that's what 800-171 Bravo, the draft version, is geared towards, those companies that have advanced persistent threats. So the word on the street that I've been hearing in the rumor mill, and some of that is rumor, and we won't really know until, like you said, those RFIs and RFPs come out. But my basic understanding is if you're dealing with if you're building some type of weapon system, so if you're developing the next generation aircraft, if you're developing some type of missile system, then more than likely you're going to fall into one of those categories of 4 and 5. Now, of course, the way the flow downs work, and your subcontractors work, the prime might be at level 4 and 5. Maybe half the subs are at level 3, and then the folks that aren't dealing with any CUI or any actual development effort, maybe they're just suppliers in some other form or fashion, but have FCI. They might need level 1, and that's kind of the basis that I've been telling my clientele when I have these discussions, and when I'm in forums like this and I'm having discussions. So here's a follow-up question to that. What would you suggest for those prime contractors to make sure that their subcontractors are ready with the appropriate level?
See, that's exactly where, and that's a great question as well. You're really on point here with that. The issue is that there's not much guidance out of the DoD at this point about this, right? And here's the problem that a prime could be facing in terms of their sub, and the sub's facing in dealing with their prime right now, in terms of being cyber secure and ready for the CMMC as it comes. And it's a big problem. If you're going to go, if you don't know the kinds of contracts, what level you're as a prime, if you don't know what level your contract is going to be at, so you don't even know your start point, right? Is it going to be a 5? Is it going to be a 4? Is it going to be a 3? So again, a lot of communication with your contracting office, with your current customers and what they're thinking. Do they even know about CMMC as it's coming? What are they thinking when this contract gets renewed? I think a lot of information there. Of course, that's if you already hold a contract and you want to keep it. If others are trying to win a contract, and again, there's a lot of communication that can happen between the contracting office and your organization. So a lot of communication, a lot of questions, asking, because if you ask, that's when they're going to feel the pressure to go out and find out if they haven't already. If they have no idea about CMMC, this is when they're like, wait a minute, somebody's asking about me. Let me go find out from my superiors. And again, when rule change does occur, and this is typical of DoD, things will take a while to flow down, right? Some offices will jump on it, others will take some time to get into it. And so as a result, your querying them will get them started. So that's number one. Number two is you don't want to go too high. So what if the contracts you're dealing with are mainly a 3 or at most a 4? Why would you go to a 5? There's now, unless you want to say, you know what, I want to be able to get all my contracts. But if you're a smaller business, any one level, once you get past like 2, any level, it's exponential in terms of the expenses that you're meeting. So you're dealing with, and of course, the organizational maturity that's required to get from, let's say, 3 to 4 or 4 to 5. You might have fewer practices, but you do need to build a lot of maturity into your organization. So my recommendation is really find out the level you need to be at, not try to go for the highest, because now you're spending more money than needed, right? You just have to be just right. And that's the problem. We don't know. The other thing is, what do you do with your subs? Now, the sub may say, okay, well, I need to be able to, win as many contracts as possible from as many primes as possible. So I'm going to try to go for the highest possible. That's great, but you may not be able to regain a lot of those expenses, right? And as charges, as expenses, charges to your customer, which is maybe a prime or a higher level sub, or low level sub. So what that means is right now there is very little guidance, and we want to try to avoid the trap of either trying to go for too high a certification. The problem is you don't want to go too low either. So this is an issue. This is a problem, and we just need to get more guidance out of the DoD. And my recommendation is pressure your contracting officers to give you more guidance, and work with your subcontractors if you're prime to figure out the right level you should be at, based on as much knowledge as possible you can get out of this, which again, you can hire consultants to help you with this, in terms of the CUI, the requirements at level 3, the requirements at level 4, the requirements at level 5, and of course the lower levels, so that you can figure out for yourself what that sweet spot is.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that it's really important to understand where your subs stand currently. So it's a good idea to have those conversations to make sure that you give them checklists to go through to find out where they really stand. Because you know, the experience is that when you ask an open-ended question, you basically get the answer they're looking for. So if you ask, hey, are you 800-171 compliant right now? And they're like, sure. But when you start getting into the level of detail and asking specific questions on certain components of it, that's when they're like, oh, wait a second, maybe I need to go back and really look to see where I'm at. So it's important for primes to have that conversation with your suppliers to make sure when the time comes that they're ready and they're prepared to be at the appropriate level that they need to be at based on the you know, the data they're going to be managing as part of that contract. So that's the only thing I would add.
Right. And I would add to that, that's great observation. You know, what I'm seeing out there when I'm talking to a lot of different companies right now, because yeah, I'm running training, but I'm also part of the credentialing committee and many other committees, and I'm involved with a lot of this stuff and talking to the DoD. But the, you know, a lot of subs right now are dealing with primes that are like, are you ready for CMMC? Prove it, right? And so the sub is like, well, how do I prove it, right? Or the other way around, the sub may not be requested of the prime yet, but they really want to be prepared when the prime comes to them, right? So a lot of times what the prime will do is, first of all, they do need to start a communication and really look at what kind of information is passing back and forth through their subcontract. You really want to look at that, because the kind of information you're sending to your sub and the kind of information your sub is sending back to you, that's the basis of CMMC, right? Is protecting information. So, and protecting data. How is it passed back and forth between you guys? And what level of information is that? What kind of information is it? Is it FCI? Is it COI? Because you might be storing as a prime COI, but your sub might just only be seeing FCI or just some order that has nothing to do with anything. Yeah. Or it could. So you have to be careful about really putting too many constraints on your sub as a prime. That's going to increase your cost, just so you know. So you really want to get the right level, not put too many constraints on your sub. On the other hand, the sub needs to be prepared at the right level. Also be prepared to have the right level of communication with their prime when the prime comes knocking. So the main thing, again, is to get help, is to get support, is to do, if you haven't done one, a 171 assessment, because all of us should have done that. And beyond that, really decide what level you need to be at. The great thing about CMMC is that it's not a one-size-fits-all. So let's take advantage of that. Instead of 171, which was one-size-fits-all. It was too much in some cases and too little in others. So this is what we need to take advantage of. So study up on what CMMC is all about, what CUI is, what FCI is, what each of those levels are, and then decide for yourself, what is the right level that I need to be at? Get a consultant to do a gap analysis and tell you what level you're ready for. And just that documentation alone, because you can't get an assessment right now. You can't get certified right now. You may be able to in 2 months, but then there's going to be a long line, and it might take 6 months to a year for that, what we just talked about, for the bottleneck to kind of ease up. So until then, get a gap analysis and figure out where you are and where you need to be.
Okay, I got one more quick follow-up question to all this. You're a prime, you have subs. Your sub, let's just say they do nothing but they're a reseller of strictly COTS products. They won't have any FCI or CUI. What is your recommendation as far as CMMC level for them?
So if you're a COTS, you know, it really, based on the guidance that we see out of DoD, if a product that you sell is the same for private sector as it is for, you know, for anyone, then you don't, you know, CMMC does not fall under that. However, if you have special accommodations or if you're storing information, then there needs to be a process where you get CMMC certified. And if there's more, I'm sure you can talk through that.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that point because there is about 350,000 in the defense industry base, and a lot of those are simply selling COTS. So yeah. I wouldn't want someone to go out and rush to say, hey, maybe I need to be CMMC level 3, when all I do is resell a product to the government or resell a product to a prime.